Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Up Show, the best Gamecocks podcast on the internet. Today is Monday, February the 10th, 2020. On today's show, we have got a packed one for you. It is game week for Carolina baseball, and this is the official 2020 preview show for South Carolina baseball. I will break down the Gamecocks' upcoming season in its entirety, including key losses from last year, pitching, hitting, the weekend rotation, my starting nine, the projected lineup, give my official prediction for the Gamecocks 2020 baseball season, and much, much more. Also, we're talking South Carolina on the hardwood. South Carolina getting a big 74-54 win over the Texas A&M Aggies. I'll break down the game in its entirety, just what it means as the Gamecocks look to string together a couple of W's and make their way towards an NCAA tournament berth. Also, we're talking football. Coaching staff changes. 3 different coaches, on-field coaches, are gone from South Carolina now, and Matt Lindsay's going to Ole Miss. I'll talk about just what does it mean for the Gamecocks. What does it mean for Gamecocks football, for the future of the program? I'll give my full thoughts on that as well. Also, we have a fantastic interview with Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com as he actually joins me to help break down the upcoming season. Opening day is Friday, ladies and gentlemen, and Kendall Rogers is on this show, is on this podcast. One of the best in the business with what he does with D1Baseball.com. He helps me break down this Gamecocks baseball season in its entirety as, again, we get closer and closer, just 4 days away from opening day. Before we get into everything, this is a podcast sent to you by our friends over at New Ground Hard Nitro Lattes. Guys, this drink is absolutely amazing. I want to start there. If you're a big coffee drinker like me, this is a phenomenal drink. They have 2 flavors, cafe latte and chai latte, which have 5% alcohol. So, guys, it's enough to enjoy casually. But also, if you want to turn up, you want to have a good time, you want to have it at the party, you want to have it at the tailgate with your friends, whatever it might be, it is the perfect drink for any occasion, again, with 5% alcohol. Like I said, the things taste absolutely amazing, guys. Trust me, I've drank enough of them to know they are phenomenal, and there's actually a reason for that. They're actually made with real coffee and tea, natural flavors, real sugar. They're imported from Holland. They're GMO-free, and they actually has naturally occurring caffeine in the cafe latte flavor, or you can go with the chai latte if you want to do a caffeine-free version. Guys, these things taste just like coffee. You can't even taste the alcohol in them. It is a delicious beverage that you can have, a delicious adult beverage that, again, you can enjoy any time at all. You can find the drinks all over the Southeast, from South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida. In stores you're going to be familiar with, like Harris Teeter, Publix, Total Wine, Trader Joe's, Food Lion, among others. Guys, if you can't find it, ask for it, because these guys are everywhere and they are taking over. Guys, if you want to learn more, I encourage you to check out their website, drinknewground.com. Also, be sure to follow them on Instagram and Facebook at Drink New Ground for new happenings and everything that's going on with New Ground. Again, that's our friends New Ground Hard Nitro Lattes, imported from Holland. Be sure to check them out, drinknewground.com, or Instagram and Facebook at Drink New Ground. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Spurs Up Show. I'm Chris Phillips, your host, as always. Hope everybody's having a fantastic Monday. Boy, do we have a packed, and I mean packed, show for you on this Monday. We're literally talking everything: baseball, basketball, football. We got some women's basketball, everything to touch on. I'm extremely excited. Appreciate you guys taking your time to join us today on this Monday. As you can probably see or tell, whatever it is, a lot has changed, but it's still the same, if you will. A lot of upgrades, enhancements. We are stepping up big time. Couple of housekeeping items I want to touch on really, really quickly. First off, I mentioned it on Friday, and you're probably seeing the graphic on social media today. The Spurs Up Show opening day tailgate, Friday, outside of Founders Park at Image Inc., right outside the right field fence, if you're familiar with that. 12 p.m. until first pitch. We will be out there set up with a tent, food, drinks, giveaways, everything you can think of. Going to be a blast. 12 to first pitch. Live pregame show from 2 to 3, breaking down the game against Holy Cross, obviously, and really just the 2020 season opening weekend. Going to be a blast. Going to have some former Gamecock baseball players coming out there as well. Should be a lot of fun, guys. I'm extremely excited. Again, if you're going to be out, you're going to be around 12 until first pitch. It's going to be a big party. It's going to be a good time. And again, 2 to 3, going to be streaming the pregame show, I should have mentioned, live on Periscope. So we'll be streaming for that hour. Going to have, like I said, guests rolling through. We're going to be doing interviews. We're going to be chatting before the game. It is going to be a blast. Going to be a lot of fun. Would love to have you guys come join us again. Free drinks. Going to have food out there as well. Going to be doing giveaways. Got some swag giveaway, some merch to give away. Very, very, very excited. Again, outside the right field fence at Image Inc. You literally cannot miss it. Going to be right there. Also, again, you probably already noticed this, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it. The podcast, full podcast now available on YouTube. You guys can probably see a little bit of a different setup. We've got the TV now behind me with the New Ground logo there. I'm really, really excited about that. I already released the video on the New Ground sponsorship, which, again, I'm going to touch on it again in just a second. But the podcast, you can now find it. Obviously, it was on there before with just the audio. Now we have the video incorporation as well. I'm really, really excited about that. And the people that tune into the podcast on YouTube, I really appreciate you as well. Also, like I just mentioned, new sponsor, New Ground Hard Nitro Lattes. Obviously, give those guys a huge shout out. You know, I released the video already on Friday, so I'm not going to rehash and necessarily go over everything I already said in that video, but extremely excited. Truly a game-changing partnership. I won't go into crazy amounts of detail, but guys, a game-changing partnership, enhancing everything that I do and everything we provide to you guys, but also going to be bringing you a lot more remote stuff, a lot more live type stuff. I'm really, really, really excited about it, the potential, what's going to happen. We truly are breaking into new ground, and we truly are taking this thing to the next level, and I really do appreciate those guys believing in me, and I'm just super excited. Obviously, we're hitting the ground running. We've got the new setup. We've got the tailgate Friday. We are hitting the ground running, and I really, really do appreciate it. I want to say I truly appreciate you guys, the love, support, everything you guys do as far as the supporting on your end. It would not be possible without you, so thank you from the bottom of my heart so much. Also, one last thing while we're on the subject of housekeeping items. Guys, if you have not done so, click the pause button, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever it might be. Rate the podcast 5 stars. Leave your thoughts. Leave your feedback. It helps boost up the show. And, again, if there's anything you want to get across, anything you want to say about the pod, that's the place to do it. Go leave a review, but please go leave 5 stars for the show. Also, if you're not subscribed and you're tuned in, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or if you are on YouTube, smash that subscribe button as well. Wherever you are, be sure you are subscribed to the Spurs Up Show. Again, daily podcast, Monday through Friday. You're going to get the notifications so you never miss out on a podcast. All right, let's talk some Carolina baseball. Before we do, though, you guys didn't think Ag South Farm Credit was going anywhere, did you? They're obviously still a very proud partner and sponsor of the Spurs Up Show. And this show, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Ag South Farm Credit. Guys, most lenders don't understand land financing. Ag South Farm Credit specializes in land financing and has been doing it for over 100 years. They make loans for small and large acreage, hunting property, timberland, farm and pasture land, even home mortgages and construction. They have a ton of great benefits, including long-term fixed-rate financing for up to 20 years, down payments as low as 15%. They have competitive rates, and they pay an average of 25% of the interest back every year as what they call patronage. They're cooperative, so they share in their profits with their member borrowers. So, guys, for example, on a $300,000 loan at 6.5% for 20 years, you would get back $2,770 each year. They have an experienced lending staff that knows land and knows how to finance. So, guys, whenever you're making a big-time life decision, especially when it's buying land or you're getting a mortgage, you're making a decision of that magnitude, you want to make sure you have the right people in your corner, the right support system. Ag South Farm Credit, simply put, is that lender that's going to take that situation, going to take that process, I should say, and make it super simple for you, super easy, and alleviate all the stress you might have. They're going to be there with you every single step of the way, holding your hand, answering any questions that you may have. One of the questions Ag South Farm Credit gets most often, the name has farm credit in it, are you just for farmers? So not at all. Their mission is to support rural America, and that can include just about anything that involves the purchase of land. So, guys, a lot of their customers are those that just want a piece of property outside of the town they can live on. So, again, guys, you do not have to be a farmer. Literally anyone can benefit from Ag South Farm Credit services. If you have any more questions on exactly what Ag South Farm Credit can do, give them a call, 844-AG-SOUTH, or visit their website, agsouthfc.com/TSUS. Again, that's AGSOUTHFC.com/TSUS. Ag South, an equal housing lender, NMLS 619788. So, again, their website, agsouthfc.com/TSUS, or give them a call, 844-AG-SOUTH, and tell them Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent you. All right, like I said, let's jump right into it. We have finally made it, folks. It is game week. We are just 4 days away from opening day. You see, I've got the baseball in my hand. I'm so excited to talk some ball. I'm very, very fired up. A long fall and spring of scrimmages has finally concluded. Thank God. As much as I love going out there and watching the scrimmages, we finally get to see Carolina suit up and play against somebody else, which I'm very much looking forward to, obviously. Let's jump right into it. Let's start by looking back at 2019. Obviously, it was a very forgettable year. Let's just start there. 28-28 overall, 8-22 in conference. When you take a look at the key losses from that team a year ago, these names come up. Right-handed pitcher Reed Morgan, obviously was your Friday guy. Started out in the Sunday role when Carmen Mlodzinski went down. Reed, what he did for this ball club, it's beyond words. A phenomenal year by Reed Morgan. Catcher Luke Berryhill, who basically was your catcher every single game a year ago. First baseman Chris Cullen. Third baseman and outfielder Jacob Olson, and right-handed pitcher Sawyer Bridges. Those are the main losses. Obviously, you have other guys like Jonah Beeman and Nick Neville, but out of the starters, the guys who contributed for you, and also TJ Hopkins, a major, major name that I wanted to save for the very end because let's save the best for last. TJ Hopkins is a big one, a guy, how is South Carolina going to replace him? Mr. Gamecock, in my mind, number 5. I'll be very interested to see how they can replace him. But again, those are the main guys you lost from last year's team a year ago. Outside of that, everybody is back. Everybody is back. And I know this team has a lot of newcomers. You're looking about 50-50 as far as newcomers and returnees, but a lot of talent on this squad. I want to start on the pitching side of things. I'm going to go through, kind of give you guys my thoughts on pitching, hitting, and then I'll kind of go through and give you my projected weekend rotations, the lineup, stuff like that. But starting with pitching, I mean, I think the lead storyline of this pitching rotation and this staff as a whole is just simply put, the return of Carmen Mlodzinski. Guys, Carmen Mlodzinski, you're going to hear a lot more about later in this podcast when we talk about with Kendall Rogers, his thoughts on Carmen Mlodzinski. I think Carmen Mlodzinski might be the biggest storyline of this entire team. To me, this team will go as Carmen Mlodzinski goes. You know, he's been a guy that's been, heralded. All the accolades, top 10 MLB prospect for the 2020 season of college draft-eligible players. A guy who's been put on preseason All-American teams and had a lot of different accolades. For South Carolina to have the year it wants to have, especially within the pitching staff, but as a whole, in my opinion, Carmen Mlodzinski has to throw like that dude. He's got to throw like that All-American. Watching him throughout the fall, throughout the spring, the stuff is there. I mean, 95 to 97 with the fastball, sitting more now at 94, 95, but touching 97 with the fastball. He's added a cutter. The breaking ball is there. The changeup is a plus changeup. The stuff is there. He's got big-time Friday night stuff. There was a reason he was in that role a year ago. Simply put, he needs to stay healthy, and he needs to pitch up to those expectations. Even when he was healthy last year, those couple of starts, he only threw 10 innings, but did not look like the guy South Carolina fans hope for. Again, it was early in the season. Take it, for what it's worth. Take it for what it is, but I think Carmen Mlodzinski is poised for a big year. I think he's going to have a big year. But I think for this South Carolina baseball team to reach its goals in 2020, for it to have the type of year it wants to have, Carmen Mlodzinski is absolutely essential to this baseball team. He's the most important player on this baseball team in my mind. So what will he do? The return of Carmen Mlodzinski is so big for this team. The other big storyline for me, or another big storyline, I think going into the season just simply is, who is the Sunday guy? I think for the most part, the roles are pretty well established with this group. I'll talk about the weekend rotation in just a second, obviously minus the Sunday guy, but I think the back end of the bullpen set with Tringali, Lawson, Lloyd, I think you've got a lot of other options. This pitching staff has a lot more depth than it had a year ago, which is truly a blessing for these guys, truly a blessing. You have a limited number of innings and a bunch of quality arms you can throw out there, but who is the Sunday guy? I think that's a question we will see get answered over the first couple of weekends. I think guys like Brandon Jordan, Andrew Peters, maybe Trey Turgis. There's a couple different guys that I think are going to get that opportunity. They're going to get looks as far as that Sunday role is concerned. But who is going to fill that role? I'll be interested to see, number one, who Coach Kingston names his Sunday guy starting out. But number two, sort of who steps up and takes the role. Because I don't really feel like through fall or spring there was one guy that really jumped out the way Carmen Mlodzinski and Brett Carey did as far as taking the weekend starter spots. But whoever takes that Sunday role, I'll be very curious because, again, that's something you want to have figured out. I mean, by the third or fourth weekend, I think the third weekend, you play the Clemson Tigers. You want to have your Sunday guy established at that point. And obviously, when you get in SEC play, you need to have your Sunday guy established. I'll be very curious to see who they roll out there on Sundays. I just talked about another huge storyline for me, the back end of the bullpen. I think the Gamecocks are as well set off in the back end as they have been in quite a while. Now, I'm not saying there aren't guys back there that don't need to prove themselves. But I love the setup that they have right now. This is what I'm projecting. I think Cam Tringali is going to be your middle relief seventh inning guy. I think he fits in very well to that role. I think in the eighth inning spot is going to be Graham Lawson. Did not pitch it all a year ago, returning from arm injury. But watching him in the scrimmages, the fall he looked pretty good, but especially in the spring, looks like a guy that, yes, he needs to be a little bit sharper. He needs to locate his breaking ball, his off-speed stuff, as Mark Kingston is well cited. But the stuff is there, guys. I mean, he's sitting 95 miles an hour right now. Looks just as good, in my opinion, as he did before the injury. Looks just as good as he did before the injury. So I'm very, very excited for the value that Graham Lawson can provide to this bullpen and this pitching staff as a whole. And then I think your closer, Danny Lloyd. I think Danny Lloyd, no doubt your closer. Some of the best stuff on this staff. 95 miles per hour with the fastball, has a wipeout slider, has an absolute wipeout slider. Again, it'll be Danny Lloyd's first year doing it. It'll be his first year. Graham Lawson coming off an injury. Cam Tringali was okay a year ago. So there are guys that need to all three of these guys have something to prove, if you will. But I'm very, very excited, especially with the 8 and 9 of Lawson and Lloyd. I mean, that is two power arms. And you think to last year, one thing that South Carolina did not have, it did not have a consistent power arm at the back end of that bullpen. Sawyer Bridges was your opening day closer. He dealt with arm injuries all year, was not the same guy since opening day. From there, it was a lot of different guys taking over. I mean, Wesley Sweat threw some back there. Danny Lloyd threw some back there. Tringali threw some back there. I mean, you just really never had that set guy to close games for you, and it hurt you. It hurt you immensely last year. So I'm very, very excited of what that trio of Tringali, Lawson, and Lloyd can do for this pitching staff. Like I mentioned earlier, I've mentioned this really all fall and all spring when I talk about this baseball team as a whole, but definitely this pitching staff. Gamecock fans, we are much, much, much deeper than we were a year ago. I mean, if you're looking for a reason to be optimistic about this pitching staff, that should be at the top of your list. Like I said, there are limited innings, and there are a lot of guys fighting for the innings. I haven't even mentioned guys like TJ Shook, who threw on the weekend last year. I think he's probably going to be a midweek starter. You think of Julian Bosnick, who's a lefty. I like the addition of him. Again, Brett Carey's going to be your Saturday guy. I mean, you have so many guys fighting for these spots. I'm really, really excited about what they can do. I talked about Andrew Peters, Thomas Farr, a lot of Brandon Jordan coming in. R.J. Danton's a guy that's going to help you. Will McGregor's going to help you. Those are two lefties right there. Trey Tugits, like I said earlier, I think he's a guy as a freshman that can contribute, throw some innings for you. John Gilreath, the lefty. I'm really, really excited about this pitching staff as a whole. Again, led by Carmen Majinski. But there's a lot of depth behind him. There's a lot of quality arms out there that South Carolina can throw. I'm very, very excited for what these guys can do. Last put, I'm going to mention this with the hitters as well. But there should be a major chip on the shoulder of this pitching staff. No question. I mean, 2019, 5.51 ERA, which I don't know how bad that is in regards to recent Carolina teams. That's got to be one of the worst, if not the worst, ERA in the last 20 years for Carolina baseball. It was certainly the worst in the SEC last year. I think right there, maybe 13th. I don't know. But either way, the chip on the shoulder of this pitching staff, can they come out? How much better can they get? Obviously, you'd love to see a pitching staff with a sub-4 ERA. That's pretty damn good in college baseball. But 5.51 is simply unacceptable. I mean, it was terrible. So what type of rebound year can this pitching staff have? And again, I'm going to talk about the hitters the same way. What type of rebound year, though, can this pitching staff have in the 2020 season? Moving to the hitters, big thing that jumps out to me here, a lot of new faces. There's a lot of new faces that are going to contribute. And again, it's a similar thing with the pitching as well. There's a ton of depth. I mean, there's a ton of depth on this team, and I'm really, really excited about it. There's a lot of guys fighting for a lot of different spots. Hell, you just look at like the catcher position. I mean, last year, all you had was Luke Berryhill, and Chris Cullen really was a guy that could catch for you every now and then, but was not – after the first weekend, you knew he wasn't going to be your everyday catcher. Luke Berryhill was really the only guy. You look at the catcher position this year, Dallas Beaver is going to be your starting catcher. Bryant Bowen can catch. Wes Clark can catch. Jax Cash can catch. Colin Burgess can catch. There's a lot of options out there for South Carolina. That's just one example for you. I'm really, really excited, though. You know, like Mark Kingston talked about, this team is 50-50 split as far as new guys and returners, and you got JUCO guys, and how do they all fit in? Again, I think there's a lot of potential with this lineup, but how do these new guys pan out? Because SEC baseball, obviously, a completely different animal. It is a completely different animal. Can they adjust to it? I think that's going to be really interesting to see, again, amongst the new faces. Another major storyline, and maybe the storyline that will be most followed by Gamecock fans is, just simply put, though, can Noah Campbell finally pan out? I mean, we're talking about a guy that, you know, has been on every preseason list, or a lot of them at least, as far as preseason All-SEC. He was on a preseason All-American team. But a guy that, let's just face it, his first 2 years have stunk. I mean, he has stunk. He has not panned out. A guy that, for whatever reason, has torn up the Cape Cod League back-to-back summers. Can he finally transition that over into his junior season, which is your money year if you're a baseball player? That is your money year. That's your draft year. But can Noah Campbell, I mean, I'm not even thinking about the draft. Can he fend off some stiff competition behind him and hold on to the starting job at second base? Guys, I'll be honest with you. Watching throughout the spring, he's a guy that it wouldn't shock me if the coaching staff decided to go with Jeff Heinrich or Braylon Wimmer at second. I don't think they will, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in my starting nine and in my projected lineup. But Noah Campbell, can he pan out? Simply put, you're going to hear Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com talk a lot about him a little bit later in the podcast. Is a guy that he thinks could be a breakout player for South Carolina. I want to see it. I want to see it before I believe it from Noah Campbell. Also, take a look at these hitters. And one thing I noticed throughout the fall, and really the spring as well, you know, guys, I could be totally wrong. I don't think this is a team that's going to rely 110% on the long ball like we saw a year ago. Obviously, the Gamecocks set records and were like leading the country in home runs in the non-conference. That did not translate over an SEC play. It really proved to be that the Gamecocks struck out way too freaking much. They relied on the home run way too much. I think this is a team that's honestly going to be able to manufacture much better than they did a year ago. You're talking about hit and run, stolen bases, again, just manufacturing runs, doing the little things. I think they're really focusing on that. And I think you're going to see a team that is much better than that. Now, that's not to say they don't have pop. I think this is a team with a lot of pop. I think you've got guys from the JUCO ranks that came in. They're going to help you out immediately in that regard. You've got guys returning like Brady Allen, Andrew Eister, Wes Clark, who can hit the long ball. But I think this team is going to be much more balanced at the plate. Obviously, have to cut down on strikeouts. No questions asked. But I am expecting a much better approach from this team. I can tell you guys one thing as well. If we hit a bunch of home runs in the non-conference, I will not get overexcited. I will not get overhyped by what it means, because in the SEC, when you're facing a guy on Friday night throwing 97 like Emerson Hancock or the rocker kid from Vandy, you better be able to scratch across one or two and manufacture some runs and put some pressure on the defense. Gamecocks did not do that consistently enough a year ago. I do expect and think they are going to make it a priority to do it this year. Another huge storyline I talked about a little bit earlier, who is going to replace TJ Hopkins? And I don't even mean replace him, you know, in the field or his statistics, but TJ to me was the guy who was the undisputed leader of this baseball team a year ago. Again, a guy that, for whatever reason, I've labeled him Mr. Gamecock. I mean, a guy that grew up a Gamecocks fan, you know, wanted to play for South Carolina, got the opportunity, made the most of his 4 years at USC. And again, a guy that, how do you replace his clutch? How do you replace his leadership on this team? Again, it's one thing to replace him, just throw a guy out there and, you know, hit 300, whatever. But who's going to be Mr. Clutch? Who's going to be that dude? Who's going to be that leader for this ball club? I'll be interested to see in that. Now, I talked about the pitching staff's ERA. Let's talk about the hitter's average. 2019 hit 236 as a team in an SEC play. I don't even want to talk about how bad it was. I think they hit like 200 as a team. Andrew Eister, the only hitter throughout returning for South Carolina that hit over 300. Again, what type of chip on the shoulder is there for these Gamecock hitters? Because, again, You're not going to win many baseball games hitting 236 as a team. You're just simply not. You were at the bottom of the conference in both pitching and hitting statistically. Something's got to give. Something's got to change. How much better can it get? Again, what's the type, chip on their shoulder type mentality? It's got to get better. Period, point blank. How much better do we see it get in 2020? All right, let's move into some projections as far as I want to give you guys my thoughts on the weekend rotation, starting now, project the lineup. As far as the weekend rotation right now, Friday, Saturday are set. Those two are very much set. I've got Carmen Mlodzinski starting on Friday. Brett Carey is going to be your Saturday starter. No doubt in my mind. Mark Kingston's basically already made it clear. Those are your two guys. On Sunday, I think you're going to see Andrew Peters. Andrew Peters, a JUCO transfer, a guy that I'm actually really, really excited about. He actually threw in the scrimmage yesterday, Sunday afternoon at Founders Park on Fan Day as well, for those who were there. I think he's going to get the first opportunity. I think he's a guy that's got really, really good stuff. Low 90s with the fastball, got a lot of cut on his fastball, got a really sharp breaking ball, good changeup as well. So he's got good stuff. I think he's going to get the first opportunity, and then from there we'll see what happens. Again, I think it's really going to be a situation where you're going to see a guy like a Peters get the opportunity. If he throws well, he'll get to go out next week. If he doesn't, they're going to give it to somebody else. I think it's just going to be who's the first guy to step up, step out there, and take it and take that job. I'll be very interested to see who that is, but I think Andrew Peters I've got on Sunday for the Gamecocks. So, again, weekend rotation, my projected weekend rotation at least at this time, Friday, right-handed pitcher Carmen Mlodzinski, Saturday, right-handed pitcher Brett Carey, and Sunday, right-handed pitcher Andrew Peters. My starting nine for the Gamecocks. Just going around the horn here. This is my projected starting nine. At catcher, I've got Dallas Beaver. First base, Wes Clark. Second base, Noah Campbell. Shortstop, George Khalil. Third base, Brennan Malone. Left fielder, Brady Allen. Center fielder, Noah Myers. And right fielder, Andrew Eister. Let's go ahead and move in the projected lineup as well. The batting order, if you will, the projected starting lineup as far as the batting order. And then I'll give you guys kind of some of my thoughts and my thought process behind this lineup and why guys are where they are. 1 through 9, your starting lineup. I've got center fielder Noah Myers leading off in the 2-hole. Left fielder Brady Allen in the 3-hole. Third baseman Brennan Malone. At cleanup, catcher Dallas Beaver. In the 5-hole, right fielder Andrew Eister. In the 6-hole, DH Bryant Bowen. In the 7-hole, first baseman Wes Clark. In the 8-hole, second baseman Noah Campbell. And finishing off in the 9-hole, I can't talk for whatever reason, shortstop George Khalil. Now, going through this lineup, you guys probably have a lot of questions. Who is this? What is this? Whatever. Leading off, Noah Myers, a guy that has been pesky all fall and spring, a guy that I think is going to fit in beautifully into that leadoff spot, going to play center field for you, extremely fast. Again, a guy that handles the bat very, very well. I think he's going to fit in beautifully at the leadoff spot. Brady Allen, again, I've got in the 2-hole, returning from last year. You guys know what he's got. I think he fits in nicely there. A guy with some speed, can handle the bat, and has some power as well. The 3-hole, Brennan Malone. I've talked a lot about him. Hit 3 home runs in the Garnet and Black World Series game in the fall. A guy who continued to show off the power, the pop, got a good glove at third as well. Someone that, again, I think is one of the Gamecocks' best hitters. Will he translate it over into SEC play? That's going to be the big question. But right now, I think Brennan Malone is one of your best hitters on this team. Cleanup, Dallas Beaver, a guy that has a ton of pop. He's got a ton of a pop. He's a typical cleanup guy. Like I said, a typical cleanup guy. I mean, he's got a big-time swing, big-time pop from the left side. In the 5-hole, Andrew Eister, returning from last year. I expect him to hit double-digit home runs, be a 300 guy again. I'm very excited about what Eister can do. In the 6-hole, DH Bryant Bowen, again, a transfer, the transfer out of Southern Miss. I'm really, really excited for what Bryant Bowen can do here. A guy, again, with a ton of pop, handles the bat really well, hits everything hard, it seems like. It seems like every time he's up there, he's hitting the baseball hard and taking good swings, has a good approach. I'm really excited for Bowen. At first base, Wes Clark. Wes Clark, a guy, if you guys have not been out to any scrimmages or haven't seen him, you might not even recognize this dude. Has put on a ton of good weight, is big now, very, very big, has a ton of pop, ton of power. You know, I'll tell you this, guys, 2 through 7, or really 3 through 7, but 2 through 7 as well. I'm excited about this lineup. There's a ton of power. I mean, you're talking 2 through 7. Any of these dudes can go deep on you. Just want to throw that out there. In the 8-hole, second baseman Noah Campbell. Now, you might be asking yourself, Chris, why'd you put Noah Campbell in there? And also, why is he in the 8-hole? I think this is the way they're going to handle the Noah Campbell situation. I think Noah Campbell is going to get the benefit of the doubt, or at least the opportunity to start early in the season and take and hold on to his starting second baseman job. I think Noah Campbell's the kind of guy people hear this phrase and they take it personally or take it the wrong way, but he's a bit of a head case. And what I mean by a head case is he's a guy when he gets in a slump, it is very, very hard for him to get out of it. I think he's the kind of guy that if you bench him early in the season and you started Jeff Heinrich, you started Braylon Wimmer, even if they've outperformed him in the spring scrimmages and everything else, it's going to be very, very hard for Noah Campbell to come back from that. So I think you give him the benefit of the doubt early on. You put him down in the lineup because he's going to see a lot more good pitches to hit in the 8-hole, the 9-hole, whatever it may be. But you give him the opportunity to get off to a good start because I think that's what's most pivotal here for Noah Campbell. He's got to find a way to get off to a good start, in my opinion. Has to. Absolutely has to. Absolutely has to. So I think he's going to be in the 8-hole. I think it's going to do wonders for him as well. I think he's going to see a lot more fastballs, a lot more good pitches to hit. I got Noah Campbell in the 8-hole. And then finally, round out again, shortstop George Khalil in the 9-hole. Listen, George, fantastic glove. The bat is coming around, but I think he's like the prototypical 9-hole hitter. So, again, that rounds out the lineup. Biggest question surrounding this team this season is what? For me, I feel pretty good about the pitching. I really do. I feel pretty good about the pitching. To me, the biggest question for this lineup for this team is, what can this lineup do? Can this lineup do enough against SEC pitching? You know, if you ask me, what are you more worried about, the pitching or the hitting? I'd probably lean with the hitting just because there are so many unprovens or so many guys that have a bunch to prove in this lineup. There's so many unproven guys in this lineup. There's a lot of new faces. You know, we're assuming, again, you watch in scrimmages. It's one thing to do it in scrimmages. What are you going to do on Friday night against Emerson Hancock? What are you going to do in SEC play against Vandy, Florida, Mississippi State, LSU? What are you going to do in those type of moments? What are you going to do in front of 8,000 people? So there's a lot of guys that need to step up, need to pan out. I feel pretty good about the pitching side. Can the hitting match it? Can the hitting come around? That's my biggest concern and my biggest question surrounding this team. The 2020 season will be a success if. For me, it'll be a success, simply put, just get back to the postseason. Get back to the postseason. You know, I don't think the expectations from South Carolina fans are any more than that. You know, I will die on this ledge. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I will die on this ledge. At South Carolina, you have no excuse to ever miss the postseason. You've got the fan support. You've got the facilities. You've got the players. You've got the recruiting. Never an excuse. And this year doesn't fall into that either. You got to get back to the postseason. You absolutely have to get back to the postseason. And again, I think it'll be a success if you do. I don't think you have to host your own regional. I don't think you got to, I don't think you got to make it to the Supers necessarily, but you just at least got to get back to the postseason. You got to, especially after how bad 2019 was. Getting back to the postseason in 2020 will be a good positive step for this team and this program in the Mark Kingston era as well. All right, my prediction for 2020. You guys are wondering, Chris, what are your thoughts? What's your prediction for 2020? When I take a look at this baseball team, like I said, I really like what I see. I think it's all led and started by Carmen Majinski. I think he has a big year for South Carolina, and I do like the pieces in this lineup. But the SEC is one of the toughest, if not let's just put it out. It's the toughest conference. It is by far the toughest conference. When you take a look at the pitching staffs, the lineups, just the depth of this conference. This conference, top to bottom, you can get beat any weekend, absolutely any weekend. I think South Carolina is one of those middle-of-the-pack teams, but I think they have a much, much better year than 2019, obviously. I see this being a 35, 36-win ball club. I see them being 15-15, 16-14 in SEC play. I do see South Carolina getting back to the postseason, being a 2 or 3 seed in the regional. And again, once you get in the regional for South Carolina baseball, who knows at that point? But I do think the Gamecocks get back to the postseason. I think, like I said, they're a 2 seed, maybe a 3, but more likely a 2. But again, a 35, 36 win year, 15-15, 16-14 in conference. That's where I feel comfortable putting this team. Again, I think the Gamecocks will be much improved, no doubt. This is going to be a South Carolina baseball team, fans. You're listening. going to be much more fun to watch in 2020, if nothing else. This team will be much more fun to watch because they're going to be much better. But the SEC is brutal. I mean, honestly, it is brutal. There's a lot of series this year where, God, it's going to be a hell of a series victory if you can go into Athens and beat Georgia 2-3, or if you can go into Vandy and beat Vandy 2-3. I mean, the road series, especially, you got to go to LSU. I mean, the biggest thing in those, you've got to avoid the sweep. You need to steal one or two of them, but you've got to avoid the sweep at all costs. And in the smaller series, when you play like the Missouris, when you play the Kentuckys, when you play, maybe even the Tennessees, you got to find – you've at least got to win 2 of 3 and get a couple sweeps in there as well. So, again, I think South Carolina's much improved. I think they do get back to the postseason, 35, 36 wins or so, about 500 in conference, and I see them being a 2 or 3 seed in the regional. And, again, more importantly than anything, getting back to the postseason. I think it will happen for Gamecocks baseball in 2020. So, looking forward to opening day. We finally get to talk baseball constantly. You guys know I'm excited about it, but opening day is finally here. We get to talk about South Carolina playing somebody else. I am very, very, very excited for it and excited for the potential of this team, what this team can do. All right, let's move into some basketball because obviously there was basketball played over the weekend. Gamecocks getting a big 74-54 win over the Texas A&M Aggies. Huge win, huge way to rebound and bounce back after what was a really, really, really tough game at Ole Miss. Obviously, you wondered just how would this team bounce back? How would this team rebound, coming home, coming back to the CLA in a day game? Very, very exciting, very great news to say that, again, the Gamecocks get a 20-point win. It felt very ho-hum. It felt very – this is what we did last time. We're just going to do it again. Obviously, South Carolina, I think, beat them by 14 on the road before. Now you beat them by 20 at home. Was very, very impressed with South Carolina's guard play on Saturday. You take a look at the guards. I mean, really, these guys made up for what was that 20-point win mostly. I mean, you take a look again. Kusnard, A.J. Lawson, and Jair Bolden, 45 of your 74 points, led by Jermaine Kusnard with 19 points. A.J. Lawson with a huge bounce-back game with 18 points. Very, very excited. I loved guys, I talked about the defensive side of the ball. Would South Carolina be able to bounce back? That relentless defense, you certainly saw that. Holding Texas A&M to, let's pull it up here, 27% from the field, 26% from three. I thought you saw the Gamecocks attack on the defensive end. Again, I just mentioned, but I want to talk again. A.J. Lawson, you've got to be encouraged if you're a Gamecocks fan. 18 points. It seems like every time I challenge A.J. Lawson to step up and be that guy, if you will, he has some sort of bounce-back game. It's sort of crazy. But A.J. Lawson coming back again, played 23 minutes, 5 for 9 from the field, 4 for 7 from three. 18 points on the day. South Carolina even shooting 74% from the free throw line. It's a good day for South Carolina when they're shooting 70+% from the free throw line. Again, just talked about the defense. Who is going to be the guard to step up? I think that's the question. With Justin and I being updated, being out probably to the SEC tournament, out of Lawson, Kusnard, Bolden, all three had solid games. Can one of those guys continue it? Can one of those guys continue to do it as we move through SEC play and get closer to the tournament? Again, Kusnar's been pretty consistent with it, but can A.J. Lawson use this as sort of fuel, as sort of fire, as a spark to carry into the rest of conference play? I'll be very interested to see that. But overall, a great win. You came home, did exactly what you needed to do. Again, I love the defensive effort. Absolutely love the smothering defensive effort. But again, you did what you had to do. Texas A&M is a middle-of-the-road SEC team. Not saying that South Carolina's kind of not right now, but a team that you already went on the road and beat. I thought you should have came home, taking care of business. South Carolina is able to do that. Very, very exciting win. And now it sets up a road game at Georgia, which Georgia's absolutely had their struggles this year. Absolutely had their struggles. So I'm extremely excited as far as, can the Gamecocks string together a couple more? Can they string together a couple in a row? Again, you're at Georgia. Tennessee at home will be a very intense game. At Mississippi State. LSU at home. Georgia at home. At Bama. Mississippi State at home. At Vandy to close out the season. So, again, Gamecocks are still fighting, trying to get on the bubble, trying to get themselves back on the bubble. The one Saturday was one you had to have. You're now 14-9, 6-4 in conference. I'm not sure how many more wins it's going to take. You're probably going to have to go 6-2 in your last 8 to even have a chance or to be on the bubble. But overall, a great win and a great way to bounce back as the Gamecocks get the 20-point victory at the CLA. Excuse me, guys. Let's move into some football. It was a big football weekend as well. It's crazy. We had everything. We've got everything to talk about. Football coaching staff changes happening over the weekend. 3 changes, or really 4 changes, I should mention, happening over the weekend. I want to go through these really quickly. Thomas Brown to the LA Rams of the NFL. John Scott Jr. accepting a deal with Penn State. I think in the same role with them. And then Brian McClendon. This one is one where I think he's interviewing today, but it seems like it's pretty much finalized, taking over as the wide receiver coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, Matt Lindsay, who is a big guy as far as recruiting is concerned and player personnel, development, whatever. He's going to Ole Miss. Everyone was asking on social media and really freaking out, guys. Everybody was freaking out, but everybody was just saying, what does this mean? Chris, the program's collapsing. You know what's so funny? I mean, I am a guy who is as critical of Will Muschamp as anybody. I mean, and this program and everything else. I've been critical, but to me, to be honest with you, this does not signal that the program is not on solid footing. I mean, listen, these 3 guys, 2 of them took NFL opportunities. One of them took an opportunity in which he got an extension and a raise with, let's face it, a better program. So I don't understand how that signals to anyone that the program that is South Carolina is crumbling because of this. I just don't see it that way. Obviously, it sucks to lose Thomas Brown. Out of the 3, that is the biggest one as far as the on-field coaches. That's the biggest one. I mean, the impact that Thomas Brown had in his first year completely flipped the running back room. I don't think anyone could deny the type of impact he had on the running backs. Sucks to lose him. Obviously, you truly, truly do hate to lose him. But, again, you get an opportunity with the LA Rams. How can you turn it down? You know, how can you realistically turn it down? Brian McClendon leaving, that to me is not even a big deal. I mean, Brian McClendon was a guy that got demoted from the OC position. You were paying a wide receivers coach $1.2 million. I'm sort of glad he's gone, if you guys really want to know. I'm kind of glad that he's gone. I mean, listen, I don't want to be paying a wide receivers coach $1.2 million. Do you? And then John Scott Jr., again, already mentioned, going to a better program, getting an extension, getting a raise. I mean, why would you not go? So, again, it doesn't signal to me. I mean, this is the business of college football. This is the business of football coaching. There are going to be teams that come in and offer, and the guys are going to take it. That's just how it goes. I don't think the 2020 season anyways, guys, either way, was going to be totally dependent on what the running backs coach did. You know, if we turn it around, went 8-4 in 2020, I wasn't going to say, hey, you know what, John Scott Jr., he's the reason. He's the reason we went 8-4. Guys, let's face it. This football season, it falls on 2 people. Will Muschamp and Mike Bobo, and that is it. Those are the 2 guys this 2020 football season falls on. Also, how can you blame the 3 guys? How can you blame them for taking other jobs? They know what this 2020 season is bringing. They know that if 2020 goes south, they're going to be looking for jobs. So I can't necessarily blame them for getting out ahead of it. Again, I don't think it signals that the football program is in shambles. I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. Again, I'm someone who's as critical as anyone about Will Muschamp. I'm still on the fire Muschamp train. I'm not a believer in Muschamp. I don't think he's the guy. But of all things, I'm not pointing to this and saying, you know what, this is another indication. I think that's just the business of college football. I really do. I think it's the business of college football, and it just simply happens. So I don't think Gamecock fans, you don't need to freak out quite as much as you've been doing. Again, I just think, again, it's something that happens. It's something that happens, especially when you have good coaches. And, you know, kudos to those guys. I mean, it's just you can't blame them for taking those jobs. You just simply cannot blame them for taking those jobs. So wish them best of luck. I think South Carolina will be able to probably find guys and hire guys to take over, you know, that are going to be solid additions. Again, it sucks to lose Thomas Brown because for all that he did, but that is the business that is football coaching. So unfortunate, but I think we will get better guys. I think we'll get adequate guys. I think we'll get guys that will fit into what we're trying to do, good recruiters, and we'll be okay. again, I think the 2020 season is going to go way beyond what some assistant coaches would have done. It falls on Will Muschamp and Mike Bobo, and to me, that's pretty much it. So, all right, let's move to your listener questions, and then we'll move into our interview with Kendall Rogers as well. Let's start with Gamecocks _only. He asked, is this a tourney team, and who do you think will be our best bat? So speaking on the baseball team, yes, I think this is a team that gets back to the postseason. Our best bat overall, that is a really, really good question because I like what Brennan Malone has done, but I don't think I'm ready to say he will be the best bat. Right now, I'm probably going to go with Andrew Eister. I think Eister, a guy that is a really well-rounded hitter. I mean, he does everything well. I think Eister will be your best hitter, but again, I think that's going to be a close battle, man. I think we're going to be much, much better at the plate. I think people are going to be really surprised about that, but I think Andrew Eister right now is your best hitter for sure. CP3 _presents. What record do the Gamecocks have to finish with to make the NCAA tournament? Again, I think probably 7-1. I think you pretty much need to win them all. I mean, you pretty much need to win them all at this point. I think probably 7-1 gets you in. 6-2 on the bubble. Worse than that, no chance we're in. Mason _Crow48. Biggest worry going into the 2020 season. Like I mentioned, I'd probably say the hitting. I think that's the biggest question mark. I think if you ask me on one side or the other, I'm more worried about the hitting than I am the pitching. But I don't feel terrible about the hitting, but I definitely think that's my biggest worry is just getting into SEC play. Can we do enough? Can we score enough to give ourselves opportunities to win series? That's going to be my big question. W _Hale. Is Kingston gone if we don't make the Supers? No. I think either way, Kingston's back 2021. I think even if we miss the postseason, I think Mark Kingston's returns, believe it or not. I think they'll give him at least one more year. But no, especially if we don't make the Supers, no, I think he's back. I think he's back. I mean, I think it's a successful year if you just get back to the postseason. We'll see what happens from there. But no, I think he's back, no doubt. Boy _KG10. Best pitcher we got. Carmen Majinski, no question. Just no. I don't even know why I had to think about that, but no question. That is the best pitcher on our rotation. Again, the guy that's going to lead everything. It's going to start and end with Carmen Majinski. If he has an All-American year, there's probably a pretty damn good chance we had a great year as well. Last question, not even really a question here, a statement, but I want to throw it on the show for my boy C. Harris 803. Image Inc. looking fire from center. Yes, it is, sir. And again, guys, like I mentioned, that's where the tailgate's going to be outside of Image Inc., outside of the right center field fence. Be sure to come out there 12 to first pitch on Friday afternoon. Again, like I said, live pregame show 2 to 3 being streamed on Periscope if you can't make it. But if you want to get in there, we'll talk some shop, talk some Carolina baseball. Going to have a bunch of former Carolina baseball players out there as well. Very, very, very excited about that. All right, like I said, fantastic interview upcoming. Stick around, guys. Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com. He helped me break down the Gamecock baseball season, the SEC as a whole. Fantastic interview. Kendall, one of the best in the business to do it. So stay tuned for that, and it's all brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Guys, whatever you need tickets to, obviously, again, South Carolina, UConn tonight. God, you're going to need to save some money on those tickets. Those prices are ridiculous. Women's basketball, men's basketball, baseball, softball, any South Carolina Gamecock sporting events, concert, comedy club events, professional sporting events, you name it, whatever you need tickets to. Like I said, the amount of events this week is crazy. South Carolina versus UConn tonight, women's basketball. Those tickets are crazy expensive. We've got softball. We've got baseball opening day. We've got men's basketball Saturday. Guys, whatever you need tickets to, SeatGeek is the way to go. They got a great ticket rating system which rates the tickets for you based on the type of deal you're getting, guys. So never again you get to scalp. You're going to know exactly where you're sitting. You're going to know exactly what type of deal you're getting. You're going to get the best bang for your buck. And they're going to make the process super simple, super easy, and they're going to really give you that peace of mind when you click the buy button to know, hey, my money right here, I'm getting the best possible deal, and I'm getting a great seat. I'm going to have a great time at the game as well. I don't have to worry if my tickets are real, none of that BS. You're going to have a great time, and again, SeatGeek's going to be all the credit for it. So again, go download the SeatGeek app, go to SeatGeek.com, use the promo code SPURSUP, that's SPURSUP, to save $20 off your first purchase. All right, enjoy this interview with Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com. All right, joining us still on the Spurs Up Show is a man who's the national college baseball writer and co-managing editor for D1Baseball.com. He joins me today as we creep closer and closer to opening day to help break down the South Carolina Gamecocks baseball team this baseball season coming up for South Carolina. I'm pleased to be joined by Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com. Kendall, appreciate you taking the time, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, you got it. I tell you what, I feel like the American Baseball Coaches Association meeting in early January is kind of the start of college baseball season, and the weather right now isn't too bad. Like, I think we're in like the 60s here in Texas, but we all know once mid-February hits, it will definitely be 25 or 30 degrees at Founders Park, and everybody will be freezing. So we better enjoy this warmer weather as we can right now, because it's going to change here soon.
Indeed. I will say we've gotten lucky the past 2 or 3 years or so on opening day. We've gotten the temperatures up in the 60s and maybe low 70s.
Well, you just jinxed yourself.
I know. I was going to say we've had that nice weather on opening day, but it definitely sets in, I feel like, the day after when it's like a high of 45. And you're like, well, that was nice for at least one.
I still remember, I think back to the coldest games I've covered. I still remember a few years ago, I covered Clemson in South Carolina. And I think the Friday night game at Founders was one of the coldest games I think I ever covered. I think it might have been – I'm trying to remember if it was Seth Beer's sophomore or junior year at Clemson. But either way, it was extremely cold. And I was always impressed that place was like jam-packed and crazy, despite the fact it was like 42 degrees at first pitch. So that's my South Carolina cold weather story.
Yeah, South Carolina is one of those places you can get all 4 seasons in a week, it seems like. So it's kind of crazy.
I know the feeling. I live in Houston, Texas. So I know exactly what that feeling's like.
For sure. So, Kendall, really excited to have you on. Obviously, we're talking South Carolina baseball as opening day creeps closer and closer. I want to start with you, just kind of the expectations this season. Mark Kingston coming into his third year. Obviously, 2019, what for a host of different reasons was a really, really tough year for South Carolina baseball. You go 8-22 in SEC play. I mean, it all begins with you lose Carmen Majinski in the third game. He only threw 10 innings last year. Just kind of talk about, coming into the season, what do you feel like the pressure is like, again, for Mark Kingston coming in his third year? Because I was talking to somebody, a former Carolina baseball player, a couple of weeks ago, actually, and, the big point we made is that, obviously you're familiar, Kendall, with the proud tradition and the history, the back-to-back national titles, but really since late 90s, early 2000, I mean, South Carolina baseball has become a staple of the college baseball landscape. I can't remember the last time South Carolina baseball had back-to-back bad seasons. I mean, there have been those every now and then, not really up to par type years, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure on this year simply because, again, you can either prove that 2019 was a fluke, or if you have another down year, it starts to become a disturbing trend. What do you think the expectations and I guess the pressure is like on Mark Kingston and this South Carolina program?
Well, I think there's no doubt there's some pressure. This is a team that a couple of years ago, did make a nice little run in the postseason. But when you look at last year, you can sit here all day and blame things on injuries. I know Mark would not do that. But, you can look at, losing Carmen Majinski when you did. We all know that the big-time potential that he has. People forget that going into last year, like Noah Campbell was coming off like an incredible summer at the Cape Cod League. We all thought he was going to be an absolute stud. He ended the season hitting 239 with an OBP like in the mid 300s. So, just not very many things went South Carolina's way last year. You get the injury to Majinski. Campbell didn't step up. Again, like I hate to throw guys under the bus, but that's the fact. Like, he was the guy that was supposed to be kind of the dude, and he just wasn't the dude. So, and that happens to a lot of guys. Like, I'm not just going to single out Noah Campbell. Like, I can't tell you how many players in college baseball over the last decade that I've covered, guys that you expect to have big junior years and they just struggled. So, I think when you look at those two things, you look at the overall consistency of that team last year, it was kind of the perfect storm. But, now, we're looking ahead to 2020. And I think if you're Mark Kingston, there's no doubt there needs to be vast improvement this year. I just think if you're South Carolina, you've got a baseball coach, Rady, and Coach Tanner. You've got to show immense improvement. And I do think this team will be much better. We had South Carolina as one of our next 10 teams in our top 25 rankings, teams that we considered for the top 25, and we did consider them. I think when you look at this club overall, you look at the return of Majinski, you look at the return of Brett Carey, who, frankly, last year I thought was their most impressive arm, once Carmen went down. I thought Brett had an incredible season. I think you look at the addition of guys like Thomas Farr, on the mound. Certainly a big-time arm, especially from a velocity standpoint. And then offensively, I think this club will be much better. I really, really like the two graduate transfer additions. Bryant Bowen and Dallas Beaver, especially Bryant Bowen, a guy that's coming, from a perennial postseason team, kind of hard-nosed approach of Southern Miss. I think he's a guy that will make a big impact for this club, even if it's just in the DH role. He can hit for power. He can hit for average. Granted, Conference USA is a little different than the SEC, but he's done it against good teams in the past. And then Dallas Beaver, just kind of a rock kind of guy. He'll be solid behind the plate. He's got big-time left-handed power. He did a really nice job at UCF last year. I think he might have had 12 home runs or 56 RBI, somewhere around there. So, again, you got two guys here who had double-digit home runs last year, both for programs that, not only do I have a lot of respect for, but programs that are consistent postseason contenders, even though UCF did miss it last year. So, again, you have to prove it on paper. The SEC is not getting any easier. Was it a couple of years ago we were thinking like, oh, Georgia, boy, like who's Georgia going to jump? Georgia's struggling. We believe in Scott Strickland, but who are they going to jump? All of a sudden, Georgia's good. Tennessee, they were like the weak link, and now Tennessee, is coming off a regional berth, and now we're hearing that like Alabama's much better. So, you could be a much better team and maybe not finish much higher in the standings. So I think it's going to be a pretty exciting year. I think this team will be undoubtedly better. It's just a matter of where they're going to fit in those standings. The SEC is just so difficult.
For sure. Kendall, I want to spend some more time talking about Carmen Mlodzinski, because to me, when you take a look at this team, he is the most important piece in my mind. When I take a look at, like, what is the key to this season, you guys had him listed as a preseason third-team All-American. And when you think about, he only threw 10 2/3 innings a year ago. So if you're a casual fan or just a fan that maybe doesn't know a lot about Carmen Mlodzinski, that's the type of potential that he has. I mean, a guy that was listed, I think, by you guys as well as a top 10 prospect for the 2020 class, the MLB draft class of guys that are eligible. So he's a big-time arm. He tore up the Cape last summer. I watched him in the falls. I know you guys did as well, up to 96, 97 on the fastball, the two-seam. I mean, the breaking stuff is there. I mean, he's got big league-type stuff. What are you looking for in regards to Carmen Mlodzinski? Because like I said, to me, I think one of the big keys, if not the most important key this season, is that, again, you guys list him as a preseason third-team All-American. He's got to pitch like that All-American for South Carolina. What are you expecting from him this year?
Well, I tell you what, it's hard to expect too much more. I mean, when you look at what he did at the Cape, I think he might have had 40 strikeouts around. I think might have been even like 4 or 5 walks or something. There's something crazy. But he had a great summer there. I mean, he was up into the mid 90s. He was holding his velocity well, and so I mean, he's a total package. He's got the physical attributes. He's got the stuff. He commanded really well at the Cape Cod League. So like you're looking at this guy in the same vein that you're looking at Emerson Hancock at Georgia, you're looking at Asa Lacy at Texas A&M, and you're right. It's kind of weird to be saying that. You're talking about a guy who's coming off a season with 10 2/3 innings of work. But when you look at his summer, you look at his ability to hold his mid-90s velocity. He can get up to 98. He's going to throw that with heavy sink. You look at the fact that he also will kind of throw a cutter, a slider, a changeup at you, and then he's made big strides with that changeup. Again, he is the total package, and so. I get kind of going back to the way I was talking about Noah Campbell. Like, I hate to just like throw the whole season on Carmen Mlodzinski's shoulders. But if this team is going to not only make the postseason, but make a run in the postseason that South Carolina fans are kind of accustomed to, he's going to have a big year, and I think he will. I think he proved it against the best of the Cape Cod League. He certainly seemed to follow that up with a strong fall, and I think he has a great spring. So. Again, he's going to throw 4 pitches. He's going to throw velocity, and he certainly has seemed to figure out the command part too. So I'll tell you what, I'm really, really excited to see this rotation with Carmen, Brett Carey, and Thomas Farr. Boy, there's some serious star power with that trio there.
Yeah, I think South Carolina fans really underestimated how big his loss was a year ago because obviously, like you said, Kendall, I mean, you talked about Emerson Hancock. You talk about the rocker kid from Vanderbilt. I mean, the arms that you face on a consistent basis in the SEC. I mean, granted, South Carolina did all it could. I thought Reed Morgan was heroic at times with the type of effort he was giving South Carolina, but just realistically, it's hard to win many series when you start every weekend 0-1. And again, when your guy's throwing 90, 91 and you've got Emerson Hancock throwing 97, 98. You're just at a disadvantage. I mean, you just call it for what it is. I want to talk to you about another guy because you talked a lot about Brett Carey. Very excited for him. And I think the thing right now that's interesting with this South Carolina pitching staff is outside of Carmen Majinski being your Friday night guy, that's a given. There are a lot of roles up for grabs. One guy I want to talk to you about specifically is Danny Lloyd. I thought I watched him in the fall, obviously. He made a huge jump, put on a lot of good weight. Obviously, the jump you kind of expect from freshman to sophomore year, but he put on a lot of good weight, fastball up to 95 miles an hour, got a wipeout slider. Do you see him more as a back of the bullpen type guy or a starter? Because I'll tell you, I would personally – I'd like to see him in the starting rotation just because I feel like, again, Kendall, talking about those big-time arms you face in the SEC, I feel like as many guys as you can have in your rotation that have the type of stuff that a Carmen has or Danny Lloyd has, I feel like it's only going to help you. But, again, I think he'd be good as a closer as well. But when you take a look at Danny Lloyd's game, just what are your thoughts on him and how big of an impact do you think he could have on this pitching staff?
Well, I think the biggest thing with him is, I guess the differentiator between him and, let's say, a guy like Majinski is just the ability to throw multiple pitches. If you look at kind of the scouting report on Lloyd from the fall, that we had, again, like you mentioned, he's up to 94, 95 with his fastball. The sliders are a power slider at 82, 85 with a good spin rate. I think it's around 2,500 if I remember right. Those are two really good pitches. But the problem you run into in the Southeastern Conference is I'm trying to think of the last big time starter in that league that didn't really have an effective third pitch and was a big time starter in that league. I'm sure there's some guy I'm totally forgetting about, but I think the biggest thing for Danny is if he can go out there this spring, especially early on, and not only show those two pitches, but go out there and throw a third pitch for strikes and be effective with it, then I think you're right. I think he could be a guy that can certainly move into that weekend rotation. So I think the biggest thing for him is continuing to develop those pitches, especially that third pitch. If he can do that, not only can he probably be a starter, at the college level, but he could probably develop into a starter at the next level as well. But there's no doubt that's a big time arm and that's a special arm, much like Thomas Farr, another newcomer.
Yeah, Kendall, I want to move to that because you talked a lot about guys like Thomas Farr. There's a ton of new talent on this team. It's no secret. Mark Kingston has gone really the JUCO route to bolster up this roster. I mean, I think he was talking in his season opening presser, if you will, that this team's about 50-50. I mean, returners and new guys. And, again, a lot of those guys coming from the JUCO routes, trying to get some experienced bats in there, some experienced arms. You talked about guys like Thomas Farr. I think of Jeff Heinrich, Brendan Malone, Bowen, those guys. I mean, just talk about the addition of the grad transfers. Which guys do you think right now are some guys that, let's say you haven't gone to scrimmages or you're not in the Columbia area, what are a couple guys that stand out to you that maybe South Carolina fans are unfamiliar with that they're going to get to know very quickly this spring?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I talked about, Bowen and Beaver earlier, so I won't dive into those guys too much. But, one guy that kind of intrigues me, just kind of reading through reports from those guys over the this past fall, Noah Myers is a guy that the coaching staff's really high on. He's a really good runner, really good defender. He's a left-handed hitter, with a little bit of surprising pop. So he is pretty intriguing to me. I think I saw where he stole more than 50 bases at his junior college last year. That's a guy that can really change the dynamic of your lineup if he gets rolling. Just because you put so much pressure on opposing teams when, A, you're able to make contact and get on base, but B, you can get on base and kind of make things happen with your legs. So, Noah Myers seems to be a really intriguing guy to me. And, Brandon Jordan, another junior college transfer, is a guy that, David Seifert for us saw him at the Northwoods League last summer. And he was up to 93, 94 with his fastball. Again, a lot like Daniel Lloyd, with a swing and miss slider. So those are the two guys for me that kind of stand out, just kind of digging through notes on these guys from the fall. Certainly there'll be some other guys involved, but, you talk about Brandon Jordan, Noah Myers, the Bowens and the Beavers, and, of course, Andrew Peters, another junior college transfer. Again, we talk about these big arms. He's been up to 95, 96 with his fastball. So he's coming back from Tommy John surgery, so I don't think he's a guy that they may not necessarily kind of rush him out there too much. But again, he has an electric arm that can really help them out. And, a little bit like Lloyd, they have him kind of slated in that midweek starting role right now. Again, he could be one of those guys that, hey, if he gets off to a great start this spring, does he find his way to the rotation? So I guess if you're South Carolina, you have a good problem to have, I guess I would say. You've got 4, 5, 6 really, really nice pitching options, which honestly, last year I didn't really think was the case. So that is an automatic step up.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this team top to bottom, the best problem it has is there's a ton of depth and there's a ton of guys battling for a limited number of spots for sure. I want to talk about, again, sticking with the lineup, some of the returners. Obviously this team a year ago was very interesting, Kendall, because this team absolutely tore up non-conference pitching. It tore it up. It tore up ACC pitching, but it's a different animal in the SEC. We know that, the type of arms you face. But this team was very power-focused, a lot of home runs. And, Mark Kingston's made it no secret. Listen, he's a big analytics guy. He knows that, there's South Carolina baseball is power. Power is South Carolina baseball. It's always been since the Ray Tanner days. It's funny, talk about Ray Tanner. One of the biggest things, his philosophy was singles clog up the bases. They like to hit home runs. Founders Park can become a launching pad, especially when you get later in the season and it warms up a little bit and you get the wind blowing out to right. I mean, it's a lot of fun out there. But when you take a look at some of the returners, I'm talking the Brady Allens, the Andrew Eisters. When you look at this lineup, I mean, what are you expecting as a whole? I don't think by any means it's the best lineup in the SEC or anything, but can this team, some of these guys that were first-year guys a year ago, because I think, like, for your lineup, I think Andrew Eister absolutely needs to have a big year. He's a home run type guy. He needs to improve and have a big year, hit over 300, hit double-digit homers. I think Brady Allen can honestly do the same. Wes Clark, I think, is a real polished hitter. Now, when you take a look at this lineup, like, what are your overall takeaways? Do you think they'll be so power-focused again, and can they carry that into SEC play this year?
Well, I think the biggest thing is getting some consistency from some of these guys. You're right. A couple of guys you mentioned, again, kind of mentioning Beaver and Bowen, getting those two guys in the program certainly helps. And you talk about from a power and a production standpoint. But, I look at Brady Allen and Wes Clark as two guys that could be, total breakout candidates. I mean, you're looking at Brady Allen, certainly a guy that can hit for power. He had a nice summer at the Northwoods League. But, again, you look back at last year, he hit around 210. Wes Clark, again, a guy that has big-time power, had a great summer at the Valley League. But, again, he hit 239 last year. So
a lot of strikeouts, too. A lot of strikeouts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the biggest thing is, like, those two guys plus Noah Campbell. Like, if you can get Noah Campbell kind of back on track and you can get, let's say, those two guys. Wes Clark, for instance, has big power. And, he had 1 home run last year. So if you can get those three guys to, let's just say they hit 280. Like, I'm not even asking them to hit 300. If those three guys can hit 280, when you look at the rest of that lineup, all of a sudden, man, that lineup becomes really productive. And, by the way, pretty powerful. So I think the biggest thing is just get those guys to be a little bit more consistent. I'm not saying they need to be great every night out. They just need to be better.
Yeah, you speaking on Wes Clark, I'm sure you guys were at it, but the scrimmage against Georgia Tech, I mean, he had a home run. He hit to dead center field that you kind of step back and we're just like, whoa, like this guy's got some power. I really like his approach now. He seems like a more professional hitter, if you will, a lot more comfortable with his approach, what he's trying to do at the plate. Let's move into just overall for this team, Kendall. When you take a look, obviously, you take a look at the schedule. It is very tough. We know how loaded the SEC is. What would you say to South Carolina fans? What should the realistic expectations be? Because, again, there needs to be improvement. At South Carolina, at a place like this, there is no excuse for missing the postseason. I'm one that believes that you should absolutely make the postseason every single year. You've got the fan support. You've got the facilities.
Agreed.
You're bringing in the talent. No questions asked. That should be the bare minimum that you do. But what should the realistic expectations be for this South Carolina fan base of this program this year?
Well, I think realistic expectations is to at least be in the mix, in the discussion for regional hosts. I'm not saying that it's going to be a tough road to hosting a regional. They'll probably run into the SEC is probably going to get only 5 or 6. And I don't know about you, but if you look at our top 25, it's going to be tough to get in that top 5 or 6. So, I guess being at least in the discussion would be a big win for this team. But I think realistically, I think being a 2 seed somewhere is where this team probably will end up. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I get it. Like, you guys are in South Carolina fans are accustomed to hosting. They're accustomed to getting the College World Series. But it's kind of what, like they say, it's like baby steps. They're like, hey, we had a bad year. Let's find a way to get to the postseason. Let's find a way to be a 2 seed somewhere. Let's go somewhere that we have a chance to win that regional. And I call that a pretty good season. I think this team overall, and again, I'm kind of going back to the conference as a whole, but the problem you run into is if you threw like South Carolina in another conference, they might be a a pretty good shot to be a regional host, but it's just going to be very difficult in this league. So I think for me, if I'm being very realistic when I look at not only the team but also the league, I would say a 2-seed in a regional makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Kendall, I agree with you 100%. I've got South Carolina, and you kind of answered my question. I've got South Carolina right now as probably a 34-35 win team, really floating around, 15-15, 16-14 in the SEC. Kendall, just give me your brief. I know you guys already put it out, your conference preview, and you guys have South Carolina finishing 4th in the SEC East. And like you said, it's just crazy because if South Carolina's in any other conference, I mean, they're probably getting picked to win the division. But when you're facing Georgia, Florida's probably going to bounce back. Vanderbilt. I mean, it's just – those are some battles that you got to go on the road to LSU. You got to play Mississippi State, stuff like that. But just give me really quickly your SEC outlook and your overall prediction for this season for South Carolina.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I just love this league. I feel like it's every single season I'm more impressed by this league. But, you look at the East Division with, Vandy, Florida, and Georgia, all being top 10 teams. South Carolina being 4th behind those 3 teams. I think even Missouri and Tennessee are going to be solid clubs in the East. Missouri, of course, can't make the postseason or the conference tournament because of the NCAA stuff. But Missouri with Ian Bedell on the mound, I think they're going to be really solid on the mound. Then you look at the West Division. When we talk about Murderers Row, 6 teams from that division ranked in our top 25. Alabama, I think I was mentioning this earlier, but even Alabama, I've heard from some scouts, is much improved this season as well. So, again, I think this is a league that's going to get 10 or 11 teams in the postseason. And, boy, it's going to be an absolute war every single weekend, as it always is. But, I think for South Carolina, I kind of go back to that I think it was the last or next to last game against LSU in the conference tournament last year. I kind of look at that game as like a snapshot of like what could be this year. Because if you remember back in that game, like South Carolina, I think they ended up losing that game, but they actually played really well. And who was the one guy that looked really good in that game? Noah Campbell. And so, like, I just kind of wonder if maybe the way they played there kind of is a little bit of a snapshot of what we might be able to can expect this year. So I think overall for me, I'm kind of with you. I think I'm in that middle 30s mark as probably a 2-seed somewhere. I don't see this team finishing in the top 6 of this league. But again, like that's not a slap in the face. This is a crazy, crazy good league this year. So I think mid-30s wins, number 2 seed in the regional, and it would not shock me at all, especially with this pitching talent, to see these guys not only make a regional, but get there and win one.
Yeah, Kendall, you speak on this league. It's so funny. I remember when South Carolina played Georgia last year, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, when did Georgia get 3 guys that throw 98 miles an hour? I was like, because, I mean, I'm kind of like you. Like, I never thought of Georgia being a baseball powerhouse, if you will, anything like that. Man, they just explode last year. I'm like, you got Hancock and you got and you're like, dude, like, what in the world? Like, you throwing 98? Well, I mean, like, how are you in college?
Yeah, it's like I was talking to our staff the other day, and we were talking about Georgia's rotation. And, you look at Emerson Hancock, it's kind of the guy that everybody talks about. But, their Sunday guy, Cole Wilcox. I thought Aaron Fitt with D1 Baseball, in our discussion, made a great comp with him. Like, he kind of reminds some people like Garrett Cole. Like, Cole Wilcox is not a finished product, but he's a well-built kid who will literally bump 99 to 100 at times. And so, when your Sunday guy throws 99, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, no doubt. Kendall Rogers at D1Baseball.com. Last question, Kendall, I'll get you out of here. You've already mentioned a couple of the names. But when you take a look at this South Carolina team, if you had to pick one guy that you thought maybe people aren't expecting a lot of them that you think is going to have a breakout season this year for South Carolina, who would it be?
I think I'd go back to probably the not-so-popular pick, or probably the very popular pick, actually, is Noah Campbell. I think he's a guy that last year in a draft year, which, granted it was, he had still had some leverage, but it was a draft year for him. I just think when you look at that year and the way it went, I think he probably learned a lot of lessons from it. Don't get too high, don't get too low, don't stress out about things. And I think now that he's kind of had a time for that year to digest, I think he gets back to more of what we kind of expected from him. And I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I think this guy's going to hit 360. But I absolutely think Noah Campbell can go out there and hit 300, 310, and hit double-digit home runs in that league. So I think for me, I think Noah Campbell is kind of the X factor. He's not the X factor to the extent to where, like, last year it was like if he didn't have a good year, the whole lineup didn't seem to have a good year. And so I look at this year as kind of him kind of being the guy that can be the table setter for this lineup. But overall, man, I like these guys on paper. It's kind of funny when we were talking about our top 25 rankings. My initial thought was like, I'm not sure, I'm going to like these guys too much. But as I just kind of dug into them, I'm like, hey, man, these guys are going to be pretty good. So I guess my overall thought is like I get how South Carolina fans are frustrated. There's no doubt this team needs to be a lot better. If this team, for instance, somehow didn't make the postseason, I'm going to say they didn't win 35 games, it would be a red flag for me because there's no reason why this team should not be in the postseason this year, and I'd be shocked if they aren't.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm really excited as well. You speaking on Noah Campbell, I think him and Noah Myers at the top of that lineup could be really, really deadly, setting up for the big bets. He's Kendall Rogers at D1Baseball.com. Kendall, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Really excited for opening day, and hopefully we'll get to do it again soon.
You got it, guys. Be good.
Perfect. So for Kendall Rogers, I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on an episode of the Spurs.